Thank you for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. We've got a small, intimate group here. We're not going to rush things. We're going to go very slowly here. We're going to walk through these cases one by one. They're all in chronological order. I'm going to provide you with the references, the paperwork, the documentation, so you can verify these cases on your own. I want to thank Rudy and your wife for giving me the opportunity to join all of you today. And what I want to do this afternoon is basically give you a brief overview of some of the most mission-critical cases within the Leonard Stringfield crash retrieval booklet, you could say. 7 of these status reports were made, and this is really what Rudy and I have been working on the past 3 years here. Lots of information to go through. I want to go ahead and get started, but the title of this talk is called Retrievals of the Third Kind, Cosmic Crashes, Corpses, and Cover-Ups. That's the name of this presentation here. And I'd kind of like to start here. UFO crash retrievals, the ultimate holy grail of ufology. Now, why is it called the ultimate holy grail of ufology? It's simple, because it's the crash retrievals that have the bodies, the debris, and the craft all rolled up into one subject. This is the vehicle that's going to get us to disclosure. Anything less than that, and we're literally spinning our wheels, because we've been in this business for 80 years now. We've got hundreds of thousands of CE1 cases, CE2 cases. What we need is the hard physical evidence. That's what's going to drive this whole field forward. And so that's why the crash retrievals are literally the ultimate holy grail here. A couple of quick announcements before we get into the cases. The content of each case highlighted in this presentation has remained intact per the description of the original source. Number 2, the identity of first-hand sources will be protected per Leonard Stringfield's original agreement with his military contacts. Number 3, the visual aids used in this presentation are computer-generated forensic composite illustrations and sketches which originated from the specific details provided by Leonard's sources. Sources for the material covered in this presentation include the following. So this is where Leonard got his information. First-hand military contacts. 3-star U.S. Air Force generals, U.S. Air Force fighter pilots, astronauts, commercial airline pilots, air traffic controllers, neurosurgeons, pathologists, theoretical physicists and mathematicians, U.S. Army officers, U.S. Navy officers, military police, high-level Pentagon officials, top military brass, scientists and engineers who work at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and other government facilities. So this is just a brief cross-section of the caliber of witnesses that Leonard used to get this information. We'll continue on here. A couple of quick quotes. Number 1, UFO crash retrievals can't be real, because if they were, I would have read about the local newspaper. That's the first one. Number 2, there are not now, nor ever have been, any extraterrestrial visitors or equipment on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This is their original press release back in July of 1980. So it's going to be our witnesses against the U.S. Air Force. That's the protocol that we're going to be following here. So this is the man of the hour. This is Leonard Stringfield. He's the gentleman who coined the term UFO crash retrievals. And over, I would say a good 30-year period, he collected these stories and accounts from these first-hand military witnesses, and they would come to him with all this information, and he compiled all this into multiple status reports. And we'll just go over a couple of biographical points here. Leonard was born in 1920, grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. By the time he graduated from high school in 1939, he already memorized the entire dictionary. So this is the kind of guy that you want on your team to be collecting these type of stories. Next one, he joined the military as soon as he heard about the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. After the war, he was employed by a chemical company in Ohio, retired after 30 years. Leonard wrote 2 books, Inside Saucer Post 3-0, but back in 1957, Situation Red, that was back in 1977. Now the next bullet item is the one that we kind of want to drill down on here. His lecture on UFO crash retrievals at the 1978 MUFON Symposium in Dayton, Ohio, caused an international sensation. Now the reason why is because this was the first time this whole concept of UFO crash retrievals actually made it onto the radar screen. But it was a double-edged sword Because the agreement that Leonard made with his first-hand military contacts is he could maintain an important part of our national history by telling these accounts, but the names had to remain under wraps. And so there was this double-edged sword here, and there was some pushback at the MUFON Symposium. Leonard passed away December 18th, 1994. Cincinnati Enquirer, July 19th, 1993. Author continues quest for truth about UFOs. What I've collected has staggering implications for mankind. This would be the biggest thing since Christ, really. If one of these cases is real, it would be a big issue here. Leonard maintained a collection of 22 bank boxes of original correspondence letters, drawings, audio tapes, and testimony from his sources. These witnesses should be located and their testimony should be presented before Congress. That needs to happen. That needs to happen because we don't need any of these lone wolves coming forward. We need an entire united coalition of engineers, scientists, people who worked on these reverse engineering programs. We need to come together as one united voice, and then we can make some good progress here. So that brings us to this document, Retrievals of the Third Kind, UFO Crash Retrievals, the Complete Investigations by Springfield, 78 to 94. And so this is kind of how Rudy and I really get going on this. Now, this is the book right here, which I have a copy of, and it's got all this wonderful detail on crash retrievals and bodies and who is involved in 18-wheeler tractor trailers being sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It's got all this great information, but as you can see here, it's dry reading. You know, this isn't for the faint of heart. You got to be a crazy fool like me to get into this kind of thing, you know. And so I'm thinking something needs to happen here. Someone needs to get boots on the ground, go through this document with a fine-tooth comb, pick out the mission-critical cases, and commit those to refined drawings. I'm not qualified to do it, and if we don't do it, we're just left to our imagination. What do these cases look like? You know, I'm not qualified to execute this plan. So I met Rudy at this air show, and I saw his wonderful artwork. I'm thinking, this might be the guy that could help me make these cases come alive. And so for the past 3 years, that's exactly what we've been doing. We've been going case by case through the entire book, making these cases come alive to preserve an important part of our national history, and that's really the basis of this entire presentation. The other book to look at, my friend Ryan Wood, Magic Eyes Only. So within this document, there's 119 crash retrievals. In this document, there's 104 crash retrievals. Now, are there some overlaps? Yes, there are some overlaps here and there. So conservatively, we've definitely got about 100 cases. I mean, that's a very conservative number. So between these two documents, we've got some really good reference information here to drill down on these cases. Now, would you go to Las Vegas if you knew the odds were 119 to 1 in your favor? Technically, we can't lose. So if you had a roulette reel and had 120 spaces and you put a bet on 119 of them, you're going to win every time. You almost can't lose. And that's the point I'm making is we only need one of these cases to be real and authentic, and the whole concept of non-crash retrieval reality completely falls apart. We only need one to be authentic, and we've got over 119 in our favor here. So, I want to give credit to Rudy for his wonderful artwork, and we're going to start here with this case, MUFON Journal, and this is number 403, November 2001, and these are all in chronological order here. This has to do with the 1941 crash retrieval at Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Primary people in this case is Charlotte Mann and Reverend William Hoffman. And we'll kind of go through this case here. The book to look at is MO 41, that's Missouri 41, the bombshell before Roswell. So we're talking, 6 years before Roswell here. And what happened is the Reverend got this knock on the door at about 9:30 p.m. at night. This is April 20th, 1941. So he opens up the door, there's a police officer there, and this police officer says, we believe what we think is an aircraft crash. We need you to help us with an investigation. Would you assist us? So he got in the squad car. They drove about 15 miles across town, and when they got there, they kind of went into this farmer's field. The military was just getting on the scene, and there were some burning embers in the background. There was farm personnel all around the area. There was a fire truck there. And what he saw was about a 25-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that had augured in at a 45-degree angle. It had a hull breach on the side of it, revealing internal components. There were 3 ET bodies laying near the craft, all about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a minute nose, all wearing this one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. And one of them was still alive when he got there. So this is kind of the scene when Huffman Man actually got there. Now, he did pray over the survivor, who lasted about 60 seconds, and then he passed away. Now, while all this is going on, there were newspaper reporters taking photographs of all this just before the military got there. And there were 2 farm personnel that held up one of these deceased ET corpses under its armpits, outstretched its arms, and one of these photographers took a photograph of this. This was handed through the family. Charlotte, who you see on the left, she actually saw this photograph years ago. And then this photograph mysteriously lost. And that's always the case with these things. We always get so close to the evidence and then it's snatched away from us here. And so we did a replica of what this may have looked like. Now, this would be 70, 80 years old by now. It would be stained, probably dirt. Some of the edges would be rough, but this is the best representation of what we could come up with, what this photograph actually may have looked like back in 1941. So we'll continue here. Now, where would you hide in 1941, where would you hide ET bodies in a craft back in 1941? Well, you would want to hide them at the Pentagon, right, at the Pentagon. But the problem is, in 1941, the Pentagon didn't exist. So, according to Paul Blake Smith, they were kept at the U.S. Capitol building. So this is something we want to consider, that there is an underground basement vault at the U.S. Capitol building. And this is what it may have looked like within that facility. So you've got 3 large glass jars, you've got the ET corpses, you've got part of the debris. So something like this back in 1941 may have existed according to Paul Blake Smith. We'll continue on here. Now, next one, 1942, and we're not even at Roswell. We're 2 in here, and we're not even at Roswell at this time. So this is 1942 at an Army base north of Georgia. This is at a location that even Leonard didn't even know where this was. So this is north of Georgia. And this is page 319 in the book, so I want you to be able to follow along. If you're something you're interested in, you can follow along in the book here. And this is page 319. And what this thing actually looked like, it's about 15 feet high, about 10 feet in the vertical axis. There were 3 levels. The upper level had this control panel with buttons and switches, so that was kind of the upper section here, and this is what you see in Rudy's drawing that he's done the blow up here. Now, the mid-level had what looked like 3 bar stools that were sitting behind a wraparound window. That was kind of the mid-deck. The lower deck had an entry hatch, and then, according to the primary source here, there were 4 crew members taken alive. They were about 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. They were taken alive. The source also mentioned that there were hieroglyphic type lettering written on the outer circumference of the lower portion of the disc-shaped craft. I'm going to do a blow up here to give you a better idea of what this looked like, and this is all 1942 time frame. So by default, I think it's safe to say that there is probably a united coalition of scientists, engineers, linguistic type experts that have multiple bound volumes of these iconologies, writing on these craft, trying to decipher and interpret what this writing actually means here. Okay, next one, Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946. Primary source was a 6-year-old boy named Tex Martin, and he was rewarded for doing a really good job at school. This is page 242, 243 in the book. This is at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Now, it had not become Wright-Patterson Air Force Base until October 1947. So in the 46 time frame, it was known as Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. And you can see here, now, this little boy was with his father, and they were kind of in this cafeteria that's adjoining to the main hangar, and there was a janitor that wanted to buy this little 6-year-old, kind of a vintage soda machine here, and he asked his father if it would be okay, and he said, yes, it's okay. So this janitor buys this little 6-year-old boy a soda pop, hands it to him. At the exact same time he's handed this soda pop, this entryway door that leads into the main hangar opens up, a guy walks through, and this boy looks into this hangar, and here's Rudy's original sketch on what this looked like here. You can kind of follow along in the process here. He's looking in, and what does he see? What does he see? Here's a rough drawing. There were two 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboy trucks with unknown tarp debris. There were military personnel there. There was a 20-foot diameter dish-shaped craft propped up on tripod landing gear. So we'll take this guy, we'll move it to the next level here. This is kind of like the second pass now. Rudy's just kind of getting things refined. You can see the tarp debris. I don't know what the tarp debris was, but that was included within the report. So we'll take everything that we got from the 6-year-old witness, Tex Martin, and then we'll take it to the next level of Rudy's drawing. We'll go into the refined drawing, and this is what Rudy King got. So you can see how he has made these cases come alive. So this is what this boy reported. 20-foot diameter dish-shaped craft propped up on tripod landing gear. It was off-white in color. It had 2 rings wrapped around the outer circumference of the dish-shaped craft itself. Here you've got the 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboy trucks with the tarp debris. We've got military personnel, and then we've got the little boy in the background here. There were at least 3 ET bodies on cots or stretchers laying on the floor just on the far side of the dish-shaped craft itself. So here's the illustration based on Rudy's sketch. So we want to give credit to Rudy to make this come alive. This could never have happened without Rudy's drawing. So this gives you an idea of what this may have looked like back in 1946, and we'll continue on here. Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946. This is Private in Records Management, page 59 in the book Space, The Final Frontier by Clark McClone. This is page 59. Here's what the cover of the book looks like, and he's a space scientist. This is the cover of his book, and what he interviewed is a gentleman who stated that he was involved with this operation. This was a 15-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that had come by a railroad flat car from Arkansas. 7 feet tall, highly polished mirror reflective outer surface of the craft itself came from this railroad call from Arkansas. Now I want to mention, there were no seams, there were no rivets, there were no socket head cap screws, there were no hex head cap screws, there were no visible means of propulsion. This thing had about a 3-foot diameter central column in the center here that went from the bottom all the way up to the top. This is the original sketch from the primary eyewitness. So I went ahead and did an AutoCAD drawing here, and you can see no hatches, no welds, no seam. What I want to bring your attention to is this red dot over here. This is the attempted point of entry with a diamond tip drill bit. I've got about 4 other cases now within the Stringfield collection where these lab coat technicians are desperately trying to breach the hull of these craft with a diamond tip drill bit. This is something that's going on and on here. All right, so this was the first pass color illustration to give you an idea of what this craft actually looked like here. And then we'll go to Joseph Wraith's drawing, which gives you an idea of what this craft looks like. And you can see he's got the red dot just aft of center on the left-hand side. This is the attempted point of entry where they're using these diamond tip drill bits. So let's go to Rudy's drawing. Now when this private record management got into this hangar, and this gentleman said, hey, I got something I want to show you. Come follow me. He brings them into the hangar, and they see this craft sitting on the hangar floor. There was a tarp folded up off to the right of the craft. In the foreground, there was a toolbox with an electric drill outside the toolbox with a diamond tip drill bit in it. And he's just shocked at what he's seeing. About 10 minutes later, they had to vacate the area. So we'll take Rudy's drawing, we'll take the original information from the primary source, and Joseph Wraith came up with this drawing right here, full color rendering of something that was seen at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio back in 1946, just to make this case come alive here. We'll go on to the next one. So who would have a need to know? Well, Nathan Twining, quote, the phenomenon is real not imaginary or fictitious, right? Patterson Air Force Base Commander. So he would have a need to know of what's going on here. Next one, Papagos Indian Reservation, west of Globe, Arizona. This is January 1947, north of Superstition Mountains. Witness was in the U.S. Navy during World War II. This is page 93 in the book. And according to the source, there were 2 military personnel driving down this unimproved road. They were challenged by 2 MPs with rifles, telling them to vacate the area immediately. You're not supposed to be in here. But it was already too late, because about another 50 foot down the road off to the left was about a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that augured in at a 45-degree angle. It had a row of indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference. There were 2 rings wrapped around the outer circumference, and then there was a low-rise dome. So they did get to see this. It's in the report. So if we take Rudy's drawing, we factor in the eyewitness testimony, we come up with the full color rendering here by Joel Christopher Payne. So I want to give him credit for the fantastic work, just to keep these cases alive and preserve an important part of our national history. Next one, Roswell road trip. So we've already got 5 in here. We finally made it to Roswell. We're at the July 2nd, 1947 time frame here. And I want to highlight this because this is something that any one of you could do like tomorrow. If you flew to Roswell, you can take the same exact road trip that members of the 509th Bomb Group did back in July 1947. You can literally trace the exact same footsteps that they followed back in 1947. So this is the layout of what we're talking about here. So it's actually July 2nd, 1947, and I want to highlight these areas here because we're not talking about just one thing. The first thing to keep in mind is what you see here with this big blob. That is the debris field. We want to start about 5 nautical miles north of the debris field at something called the touchdown site. That is where Lincoln LaPaz, who is a meteorite expert, and Louis Rickett, 509th Bomb Group member, what they found was fused green glass that could only be done by high heat. You don't get that with a weather balloon. So we can take the weather balloon theory and wipe it out immediately. We're not talking about a weather balloon here because you're not going to melt glass, sand into glass with a weather balloon. The other thing they found was a seamless black box the size of a bread box, which was never opened. We don't even know to this day if they were ever able to open, but there was a small box found not too far from where the fused green glass was found. So that's the first thing. Now, 5 nautical miles south of the touchdown site is the debris field. That's where Mac Brazel, rancher Mac Brazel, and 7-year-old Timothy D. Proctor came across a 200-foot wide by 3/4 mile long debris field that was completely encased with 3 types of debris. Number 1 type of debris was small type tinfoil material that could not be cut, could not be burned, could not be dented with a 16-pound sledgehammer. That's debris number 1. Debris number 2 was this so-called memory metal, the kind of material where you could crunkle it up on your hand, you would let go of it, and then it would spread out like liquid mercury. That's debris number 2. Debris number 3 were these small I-beams with hieroglyphic type Egyptian lettering written on the inside wall that talked about by Jesse Marcel Jr. Now the flight path is from the northwest to the southeast. What you see here is the second body site, also known as the Timothy D. Proctor body site. 2 bodies were ejected at that location. Now if we continue going on, this is about 35 miles north of Roswell is the crash site, where another 2 bodies were recovered. An additional body was found alive. So there were 5 bodies, 1 was still alive. That's in a nutshell the breakdown of what we're talking about here. Now, when you go to the Roswell area of the debris field, this is what you're going to find. This is what it looks like out there. It's remote by car, but not remote by plane. There's no, high mountains. There's really no trees. So if you go there today, this is what you're going to find here. So again, it's remote by car, but not by airplane. And here we have Mac Brazel and Timothy D. Proctor. This is the morning of July 3rd, 1947. And here they have the debris field. You can see the rut that was carved in. And this is what it looked like when they both got there. Now, the way they rolled back then is if you were old enough to walk, you were old enough to ride horseback. And so that's why you see these two people together, even this 7-year-old boy. Now, we know for a fact, and it's talked about in Ryan's book here, Magic Eyes Only, that Battelle Memorial Institute, which is America's oldest defense contractor, they are intimately involved in this. We know this now. We've got enough documented evidence to indicate that some of the Roswell debris was sent to Battelle Memorial Institute without a doubt. It's very clear at this point. Now, July 8th, 1947. So whatever the bodies were, whatever biological material there was sitting out in the desert for the night of the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, into the night of the 7th when the retrieval operation began, and then the morning of July 8th. That's what you see here. So, according to Don Schmidt, Tom Carey, the Roswell craft was about the size of a Volkswagen Bug, 13 feet across. It looked like an egg-shaped craft with a dome on top. Here you see the survivor, and then you've got the 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboy that was used to retrieve the craft itself. We'll go on to the next slide here. Major Jesse Marcel, intelligence officer. This is what he said. It certainly wasn't anything built by us. We'll continue on. 1947 Roswell Army Airfield Yearbook. Do we have any sources, any military credible sources that can tell us what the interior of this thing looked like? Well, it turns out we do. So here's the yearbook. In the yearbook, I want to bring your attention to this gentleman right here, Sergeant William W. Bud Taylor. He was at the crash site. He got a look inside the egg-shaped craft. Here you see what good photo of him. Here's his bullet items here. Sergeant William Bud Taylor. The craft, Taylor said, quote, seemed like it could have been from Earth, only from our future. Certain areas of the interior of the craft were entwined with a network of strange plastic-like fibers or filaments. The interior was also outfitted with embedded flat screens or display panels. An ethereal violet or pink-purple color was incorporated in some of the materials of the construction of the craft. Some of the craft structure was embossed with unusual hieroglyphic-like symbols that he described as being somewhat Asian writing. There were bodies, small corpses were found that he described as being like little humans. So if we take the information from the 509th Bomb Group member, William Bud Taylor, who was a first-hand military witness, this is what we're going to come up with, and this is what Rudy came up with. We've got the flat screen monitors represented here. We've got the fiber optic cables, which now we know were the fiber optics that we know today. We've got the hieroglyphic type writing in here. We've got the hull breach. So something like this was described by this 509th Bomb Group member. Now, of course, I had to do some digging. Is this guy legitimate here? El Paso Times, May 9th, 1985. Services for W.F. Bud Taylor, 87, of Roswell, will be at 10 a.m. Friday in the first. So, yes, it checks out. He is who he said he was. So, just wanted to verify that. Now, we'll move on here. That brings us to this gentleman, Ernst Steinhoff, number 2 person under Werner von Braun through Operation Paperclip. This is the gentleman. What did he say about all this Roswell? The Roswell craft was not extraterrestrial, it was extra-dimensional, okay? Now, do we have any other testimony from a credible witness talking about this? U.S. Navy Commander George W. Hoover, seated left, that's this gentleman. He was clued in on Roswell. What did he have to say about it? Well, this is what he said. The Roswell visitors were not extraterrestrial, but actually extratemporal from our future. So that's an interesting understanding. Now, how do you move a 13-foot wide egg-shaped craft? Turns out, believe it or not, that the 509th Bomb Group did not have a crane at the base. I mean, can you believe it? It's true. Don Schmidt confirmed it. They did not have a crane. So it was a civilian independent contractor that had to drive all the way from Roswell up to the crash site. They hooked a lanyard around this thing, and then they hoisted it up on the 18-wheeler tractor trailer. That's what you see here. That's how they retrieved the egg-shaped craft and brought it back to the base. So now we're going down Roswell Main Street. That's what you see here, and you can track this exact course today. I've driven down this myself. This is something you can do. We've got the time here at 4 p.m., July 8th, 1947. We've got it down to plus or minus 5 minutes because we've got multiple witnesses, including 2 paper boys, who saw this egg-shaped craft on an 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboy truck going toward the base. So we've got it confirmed. About 15 minutes later, it made it to the hangar here. Now, Roswell Daily Record, July 8th, 1947. Roswell Army Airfield captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell. This is July 8th, 1947. Less than a day later, they changed their mind, July 9th, 1947. Then it says General Ramey empties Roswell saucer. Ramey says excitement is not justified. General Ramey says disc is weather balloon. So within 16 hours, they completely changed their entire thing from a flying saucer to a weather balloon. This is July 9th. So July 8th, 1947, this is hangar P3, building 84, which still stands today. And I'm taking you inside this hangar. We're going to start over here. We've got our egg-shaped craft on the 18-wheeler tractor-trailer lowboy truck. We've got the caskets, child-sized caskets that were confirmed by mortician Glenn Dennis. We've got the ET bodies laying on the hangar floor, and then we've got this crate that they were building, all going on at the same time. Now, by this time, one of the bodies has already been flown out to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Let's continue on here. Roswell Army Airfield, hangar P3, building 84. So, of course, I had to do some digging. So I contacted the maintenance personnel over at the Air Center in Roswell, and I said, I'm a historian. Would it be possible to set up an appointment to take me inside this hangar building 84? He said, yes, I can do that. So I actually met this guy. We spent 2 hours going around the entire base. I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. So I'm going to take you inside this hangar. This is what it looks like. This could be the most historic hangar in all the United States. It still stands today. And if you do the right legwork, you can get inside here. This is kind of getting inside now. They do maintenance work, they do aircraft shredding, they do aircraft scrapping here. You can see the engines inside here. And over here is where that tractor trailer would have been right here. These are where the crates were here. The back crate was over here. Let's continue on. Here you see some of the engines and the maintenance. You've got aircraft skins, maintenance personnel, that they're doing a lot of aircraft fuselage skins in this location. And then we start getting kind of near the center of the hangar, and I want to go one more slide in, and this is it. According to the witnesses, it was at this spot right here, plus or minus 6 inches, is where they laid the bodies out right there. It's kind of a strange feeling when you get there, because if this is all true, this would have been where the bodies were laying back in 1947. Okay, now, next thing that happened, this is the night of July 8th, 1947. Atomic bomb pit number 1. So if this was an atomic bomb that was in this pit, they'd have this B-29 taxi over the bomb pit, and then by way of a hydraulic lift, they would hoist this bomb into the bomb bay of the B-29. On that night, there was no atomic bomb there, but there was a wooden crate containing at least 3 ET bodies, and they had 2 rows of perimeter screens with MPs with rifles told to shoot to kill anyone who got into these perimeter screens. Now, this is over a weather balloon now, so we can rule out the weather balloon. Something else was going on here. Here's Straight Flush that taxied over atomic bomb pit number 1. Once they brought the crate into the bomb bay, it made a direct flight to 8th Air Force Headquarters, Fort Worth, Texas. And that's where this Straight Flush went. Now, I did some digging on Straight Flush B-29 that went to Fort Worth. It was scrapped in 1954. So beside the Wright Flyer, which is at the Smithsonian right now, this aircraft would have been the most historic aircraft in the United States, and it's gone now. The craft that actually carried the bodies has been scrapped. The only thing we have left at Roswell that has anything to do with Straight Flush B-29 is this display at the Air Center. And here's Straight Flush B-29. This is what the nose artwork looks like, and that's all we have left for like the most historic aircraft in the world. Now, C-54 Skymaster, flown by Pappy Henderson. This is July 8th. At least 1 body plus debris was sent directly to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. So in addition to B-29, we had the C-54 flight. So I had Rudy do a drawing. This is Oliver Pappy Henderson, and then he's overseeing the loading of one of these bodies onto his C-54. He's pilot in command. He needs to know what's going on in his aircraft. Okay, we'll continue on here. At least one ET autopsy was done kind of haphazardly at the base, and then sometime after July 9th, 1947, we believe that something was done at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, in the terms of an autopsy. Now, what evidence do we have that any of this is true? Do we have any credible witnesses, military witnesses, firsthand, that we can actually put our hats on and get some verification here? I want to introduce you to this gentleman, Marion Black Mac Magruder, Marine pilot, World War II ace, deployed to England February 6, 1943 to learn about night fighting. So he's a decorated pilot, best of the best, credible witness, someone that you can actually trust. And so, of course, I had to do some digging here. The Lexington Herald, August 9th, 1945, Colonel Magruder was one of 5 Marine pilots selected in 1942 to go to England and study night fighting techniques. So prior to that time, the U.S. didn't know anything about night fighting. They had to send Marion Black Mac Magruder to England to learn night fighting, then fly him all the way back to the U.S. so he could train pilots. So we're talking about a credible witness here, a historical figure. That brings me to one of his sons, Mark Magruder, son of pilot Marion Magruder. This is about 5 years ago. I did about a 3-hour interview with this gentleman, all on videotape. He showed me his father's original notation, his awards, his induction into the Aviation Hall of Fame. Here are some of the medals. That's the induction into the Hall of Fame. So he absolutely is who he said he is. There's some of the other medals that he got as well. Credible witness. This is the Air War College that he was involved in. This is 1947 to 1948 timeframe. And they were at Montgomery Field back in April of 1948. And I was able to secure some of the original declassified documents that talk about this here. And you can see study history file, Air War College 4748. I'm going to move forward here. Air University Air War College, Montgomery, Alabama. That's where they were originally stationed. Now, that brings us to this. So in April 1948, they made a field trip to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, Wright-Patterson Air Force. This is April 1948, and this is the actual listing of where they went and the time. So this checks out completely. Now, while they're there is a call from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So they originally were stationed at Montgomery Field, and there's this urgent call from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to please come to us quickly because we want to get your opinion on something. So all these pilots pile into this car, they fly to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, they're brought into this room, large room, and 2 guys walk in with boxes and they start handing out pieces of the Roswell debris to all these fighter pilots. They're gauging the reaction of these pilots. Could they handle this new reality? It was like a trial balloon. That was what they were doing here. Now, when that was done, all these pieces were brought back into these boxes, and these pilots were led down this long corridor. They made a left-hand turn. They were brought into this another room with a one-way mirror, and they were actually shown the survivor at Roswell. And that's what Rudy has done such a well job here. Now, he was described as 3.5 to 4 feet tall, squiggly looking, emaciated arms, kind of looked like Casper the Ghost. He had an oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. So they saw the survivor and they saw the other deceased corpses as well. So not only did he get to see the survivor, but he saw the ET corpses as well. Now, this is coming from a United States Marine pilot, decorated ace with thousands of hours of experience. So some of the notes that I was able to get from his son, Mark, and this is a direct quote from the notes that I was able to get here. They all think the bodies are at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, but they are at Eglin Air Force Base in vast underground cold storage vaults there. This is according to Marion Black Mac Magruder. So not only do we have Wright-Patterson Air Force Base as one of these repositories, but we've got Eglin Air Force Base, we've got Homestead Air Force Base, we've got MacDill Air Force Base, we've got Edwards North Base Complex. So they're peppered around the entire United States. There is no way the United States government is going to put all their eggs in one basket. What they're going to do, and it's the smart thing, anyone would do this, you want to diversify your portfolio so that if you have an accident, you've got a backup plan. It only makes sense. So they're going to definitely diversify their portfolio here. We're going to move on. White Sands Missile Range. This is July 4th, 1947. So we're still within this Roswell time frame. Page 196 in the book. The military witness was a technical sergeant, U.S. Army Air Force. And what I want to highlight is when this gentleman was on this retrieval operation, this whole thing was at night, completely at night. Came down in one of these sand dunes at about a 40-degree angle, about 150 feet in diameter. And I want to stress that this whole area was excruciatingly well lit. They had light-alls on this thing, they had searchlights on this, they had spotlights on this, they had people with Geiger counters going around this thing. This is 150 feet in diameter, dish-shaped craft. They had people taking still camera photographs. They had motion picture film reels going on of this thing. So in other words, bottom line is it was very well documented. This is something that was very well documented. So we'll take Rudy's drawing as a guide and we'll go to the full color rendering here to give you an idea of what this looks like back in 1947. Well documented. So what's the takeaway here? Actionable item. Since still photography and motion picture film reel was recorded of this event, senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances should track down and utilize this evidence for future public hearings. Now, this is where we want to really drill down here, because the problem we're running into is a lot of these senators and congressmen, number one, they don't have a need to know, and they have not been read into these programs. So how can they get access to something that they've never been briefed on? That's what we're running into here. So that's the roadblock to the congressional hearings, is these congressmen, senators, they don't have a high enough security clearance even to get to this stuff. So that's why we're stuck in this rut, and it's incumbent upon us to track down these final legacy witnesses to come forward. Hopefully we can get to their supervisors, and their supervisors can take us to the debris, the bodies, and the craft. That's the final hope. It literally is the final curtain call on crash retrievals. This is it. It's only us here. The United States government is not going to help us out. It's going to be upon us to bring this forward here. Let's continue on. UFO crash retrieval, 1947. Of all places, at Berkeley University. You wouldn't think so, but this is at Berkeley University. Page 197 in the book. Albert Bruce Collins, deceased. He was a metallurgical engineer. He was at the right place at the right time when this 18-wheeler tractor trailer backed into a warehouse at Berkeley University. Here's Rudy's drawing here. This is an egg-shaped craft, 30 feet across, 15 feet high. The outer hull had this hull breach into it, showing you the interior components. Now there was about a 3-foot diameter egg yolk right here. It had a forward composite bulkhead and then another bulkhead wrapped around the outer circumference of this 3-foot diameter central egg yolk here. Now he also mentioned that on the bottom right of this craft, there was a hull breach with the shrapnel coming out of this thing. So this is what this metallurgical engineer described. Now, if we take Rudy's drawing, we factor in the primary eyewitness, we came up with this full color rendering just to give us an idea of what this case may have looked like back in 1947 at Berkeley. Let's continue on. Carrot Patch, south of Salinas, California, July, August 1947, seen by 2 19-year-old workers in a nearby field. Now I got this from the original Leonard Stringfield dictation notes. That's where I got this information from. What they describe is a 9-foot diameter dish-shaped craft, 4 feet tall. It has a double row of indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference, kind of a flat top here. And this is 2 19-year-old boys that discovered this. X marks the spot. So technically, I could probably get you within 1/8 of a mile of where, here you've got the freeway here. Here is the 101 here. So I could probably get you within 1/8 of a mile, but this is so long ago, there wouldn't be anything left. I mean, it's picked through pretty well. What they described is It came down the night before. The foreman saw this, alerted the two boys, and when they got to work the next morning, they walked up to this craft. They kicked the side of this thing. This is what the craft looked like, about 9 feet in diameter, had a flat top. And this was my first pass SolidWorks rendering to give you an idea of what this thing may have looked like. So then here's Rudy's drawing. Now, within 5 minutes of these 19-year-old boys getting on site, there was a convoy of military personnel pulling a trailer. They were told to vacate the area immediately, but they did see them manhandle this craft up onto the back of this trailer. Within 10 minutes, they were out of there. So this is another one of these cases where civilians got to the site before the military did. And then this is Joel's full color rendering based on Rudy's drawing to give this thing, you know, make it come alive and preserve our history here. Let's continue. March 25th, 1948, Aztec, New Mexico. All of the blood, sweat, and tears research documentation was done by Scott and Suzanne Ramsey. And according to Stanton Friedman, these two individuals have put more research in on this case than anyone has ever done on Roswell. It's almost the forgotten case, but so much research has been done on Aztec here. This is the map that shows you where this thing came down, 1948, about 16 miles northeast of the town of Aztec, New Mexico. And we'll kind of run through this case. What they found was a 99.9 foot diameter dish-shaped craft, highly polished mirror reflective outer section to the craft itself, had a low-rise dome with a number of porthole windows wrapped around the outer circumference. So this is what it looked like when the oil field workers got there very first time. So this thing is just under 100 feet in diameter. They were shocked at what they saw. Military didn't get there yet, so they climbed up the rim of this thing and went to one of these portholes. And they're looking in this porthole window, and what do they see here? They found a small quarter-size hole within one of these porthole windows. So one of the oil field workers went back to the truck, pulled out a pole, pushed that pole through this little quarter-size hole, and were starting to jiggle it around. They activated a device that opened up the entryway hatch on the bottom of the craft, and when they got in, they went up to the upper dome, and they saw 2 ET bodies slumped over, deceased, up on control panel. There were buttons and switches. There was iconology, purple/violet colored iconology, hieroglyphic type lettering written on the inside wall of this upper dome. That's talked about in multiple cases before. So we've got 2 bodies there. By this time, the military got involved. They told everyone to get out of the area. All of the oil field workers were told to vacate the area. They went inside the rim of the disc. They found 14 more bodies for a grand total of 16 bodies recovered at the Aztec, New Mexico site. So how do you move a 100-foot dish-shaped craft way out in the deserts of Aztec, New Mexico? Well, when the military went into this craft, they found a pin device. And they activated this pin device. And when they did that, the whole thing came across and broke apart like 3 pie segments. They loaded those pie segments on M25 tank transporters and brought them to Los Alamos. That's how they moved it. This is all according to Scott and Suzanne Ramsey. Now here you see the M25 tank transporters bringing these pie segments over to Los Alamos. And that's how they actually moved this thing. It was not moved in one unit, it was moved in multiple pieces. So C-119 flying boxcar, Sierra Madre Valley, Mexico, sometime prior to 1951. So I'm thinking it's a 1948 time frame. Page 32 in the book. This is a small craft about 9 feet in diameter, and what you're looking at here is a C-141 boxcar. Now, how do we know the diameter of the craft? Very simple, because if you take a tape measure to the inside wall of the cargo bay of the C-119, it's 9 feet 10 inches wide. That means by default, it's a mathematical certainty, the craft can't be any larger than 9 feet in diameter because you have to allow 5 inches on either side for clearance. So we're talking about a small craft here. And the witness described how when the clamshell doors were open, he was asked to assist the United States military bringing this craft into the aft cargo bay doors of the C-119. So here's Joseph Ray's full color rendering of what this may have looked like back in 1948. Now, he said that at least 3 bodies were recovered. And when this construction worker walked over to one of these bodies, and we've kind of done a little bit of an idea enlargement here to give you an idea of what this retrieval operation may have looked like. He went over and touched the skin of one of these bodies, and the skin came off on his hand. So they were burnt. It was a kind of a gruesome scene, but this is according to the witness here. Continuing on, Naval Air Station, Sunnyvale, California, 1951 or 1950. This is Hangar 1, which you can still go to today. I've actually been in this hangar. This hangar is so large, it has its own weather. That's how big this hangar is. So this is page 57 in the book. This is a radar operator. So yeah, that's right. You can still go there today. So when he walked in this double doorway, he was shocked to see about a 100-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It had a low-rise dome. There were porthole windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. He was challenged by a guard, told to vacate the area immediately, but he did say, quote, "It was certainly no aircraft of ours," according to the radar operator. Hundreds at Farmington report large force of flying saucers. Albuquerque Journal, March 18th, 1950. Yeah, this is a watershed case. There were 500 dish-shaped craft on this date. The leader, quote-unquote leader, was a red-colored UFO. These craft were seen making these 90-degree left-hand turns. They could fly backwards. This was an armada back in 1950. Now, why is any of this important? Because during the early 1950s, there was a standing order by the U.S. Air Force told to our pilots to shoot these things down. Newspaper clipping after newspaper clipping talking about shooting these things down. Jets keeping 24-hour alert for saucers. Pilots ordered to down objects if they don't land. On the saucer trail, pilots told shoot them down. Jets on 24-hour alert to shoot down saucers. So again, after newspaper clipping in the early 1950s, there was this shoot down order. The aircraft they were using was the Lockheed F-94 Starfire, and if you want to get a close-up view of one of these things, there's only 2 places to do it. Pima Air and Space Museum in Arizona and the Air Force Museum, Dayton, Ohio. Now, if you go to Arizona, it has these front rocket flaps in the closed position, so you won't be able to see much. But if you go over here to the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, they have it with the rocket flaps in the deployed position, ready for an attack here. So here is one of these shoot down orders. This is something that went on. A lot of these jets, virtually all of them, carried gun camera footage. So we know they have legions and warehouses full of gun camera footage, 8x10 glossy black and white footage. They've got 8x10 glossy color photography of these craft. This has been going on for decades here. Now, why this is important, that brings us to this letter to Leonard Stringfield by a woman named Mildred Bissell, October 2nd, 1979. I'm just kind of rip through this here. I heard you speak at the MUFON Symposium in Dayton last year, and I am interested in your research on retrievals of the third kind. I gave a talk at a local library last week, and in the discussion period following, a fellow told me that when he was a gunner in the Air Force, he had emptied his guns on a UFO and had taken pictures with his gun camera that clearly showed the shells exploding against the side of the craft. He said the camera was taken off the wing of his plane when it landed, and the pictures developed. At 2 a.m., a couple of military policemen came and got him out of bed and took him to the base auditorium. They ran the 17 seconds of movie footage of the UFO over and over and then questioned him and 2 other crew members until 10 a.m. He was warned never to tell anyone what had happened. He said he had a wife and a family, a good job, and a lot to lose. He seemed afraid of the CIA and wouldn't even give me his name. So bottom line is, here you've got this pilot who emptied an entire magazine of shells on this thing, got it caught on gun camera footage, and was told never to talk about this. This is something that has gone on over and over multiple times. They absolutely have gun camera footage of these intercepts. So that brings us to Classified Materials Library, unknown U.S. Air Force Base. This is a former military officer, page 212, 213 in the book. So he's in this Classified Materials Library. He had the correct security clearance to get in there. So he opens up one of these file cabinet drawers and he pulls out one of these manila folders, and this is Rudy's drawing of what he saw. And what he described was an 8x10 black and white glossy photograph of about a 36-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It had a low-rise dome and then porthole windows wrapped around the outer circumference, and there was a tiny hole inside one of these porthole windows. We'll move on here. What he said, talking about this classified materials library personnel: military officer had the correct security clearance which gave him access to a classified materials library. Number 2, report seen by witness made references to crashes and that bodies were recovered. Number 3, in addition to diamond tip drill bits and acetylene torches were used to gain access to the interior of the craft. 4, eventually technicians were able to gain access to the interior of the craft by way of a small entry hatch. And this is interesting. The report said, referring to the door, that it was almost as if the material of the craft liquefied and then solidified again. So bottom line is, a lot of these witnesses are telling us that the seams on these craft are so fully integrated into the skin of the vehicle, you could not put a razor blade in there. They're so fully integrated. That's what we're dealing with here. Like a liquid metal, a safe, self-healing metal. The Pentagon, 1952, off-limits room. This is a worker. This is page 152, case 1 in the book. Now, this worker got access to an underground basement at the Pentagon, probably by accident. She didn't really know where she was going. So she gets into this basement. She kind of goes into this room. It's dark. It's dingy. There's some cardboard boxes off to the left, and she kind of does a 180. And what does she see when she makes this turn? She sees an E.T. corpse in a large glass jar. This is what she is absolutely shocked, and this is Rudy's drawing. I said, Rudy, you got to give me this lady with this shocked look on her face, you know, and so this is what Rudy had done. Within 5 seconds, this woman feels this hand on her shoulder. It was an MP telling her to get out of this area immediately. She was not supposed to get in there. So this is what this witness is telling us here. And when you take these witnesses as a whole, could some of these people be lying and hoaxing? Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, no doubt about it. But when you take it as a whole, when you take it as a body of information, as a united coalition, not all these people are lying. And you know, we've got 119 people here. They're not all lying. Here's Joseph Ray's illustration based on Rudy's drawing. So something like this was most likely going on at the Pentagon. So of course, I had to do some digging. Is there, in point of fact, a basement at the Pentagon where they could be hiding these things? So of course, I went some digging here. Peninsula Times, Tribune, March 25th, 1989. New defense chief gets lost in Pentagon basement. We're talking about Dick Cheney here. Darth Cheney, of all people, gets lost in the Pentagon basement. So here we go. There is such a place here. This is also confirmed by James Fox that there is such an underground vault at the Pentagon basement where they could be hiding who knows what. But bottom line is, it does exist. Over here it says, the Pentagon building, which covers 29 acres. Huge building. Who knows what they might have in these basement. Okay, we'll continue on. Dutton, Montana, 1953. Cecil Tenney is a civilian, page 16 within the book. He's driving down the road. Just a nice leisurely day. What does he see? Well, number one, he looks up and he sees a 120-foot long cigar-shaped craft tipped up at a 45-degree angle, and it's belching out fire and smoke and balls of fire coming out of this thing. It's like trying to keep itself airborne, but it's having a hard time. That's what he said. Now, the oncoming traffic had their tailpipes caught on fire, and he can't believe what he's seeing here. So what he does, and this is our witness here in the pickup truck, he drives down to the local base, and he files a report at a gas station. He actually goes to the gas station, files a report. 10 minutes later, a police officer comes in and he files virtually this identical report. That night, when the primary witness gets home, he gets a call from this nice-looking gentleman up here. This is the base commander. His exact words were, "I want to see you." So he was told to go to the base the next morning. He's grilled for about 3 hours. What did you see? You're not allowed to talk about it. He had to sign non-disclosure agreements. as he's walking away, he sees these two muscular military personnel with potato sacks over their backs. One of these guys trips, falls, this bag comes off, falls on the floor, and he said it looked like human body parts. Now, I can't tell you if it was ET things or I don't know. He didn't know either, but he said it looked like it could have been human body parts in there. We don't know, but this is part of the record. We have to maintain historical accuracy. So, Great Falls Air Force Base is where this originally took place. Now became Malmstrom Air Force Base, which is the site of multiple UFO incursions back in 1967. We got that confirmed from Robert Salas. This is Great Falls, September 20th, 2010. No less, this is back in 1967, no less than 10 nuclear ICBM missile silos went offline back in 1967. 2 weeks after the event, Boeing engineers came to the missile silos and they went from A to Z checking out all the electronics. They could find nothing wrong with the system. So whoever or whatever, it was on purpose. There was intent to show U.S. Armed Forces that there's something else going on here. Who knows the agenda? But the bottom line is Boeing could find nothing wrong with their system. So something intentionally incurred on the Air Force Base and shut down these ICBM missiles. And this is, yes, yes, correct. And that's what we have in Rudy's drawing here. He's shown the incursion here. So this is something that also went on in the former Soviet Union. They also had the similar type issues. Argentina, December 7th, 1954, something similar to what Cecil Tenney described, was seen this cigar-shaped craft with smoke and flames coming out the back of it. So it's not an isolated incident. This is Argentina, December 7th, 1954. This is our Tom Bogan illustration of what that craft may have looked like. Continuing on, Fort Polk, this is Camp Polk, Louisiana, summer 1953. Primary source was a private in the Army. This is page 80 in the book. He was at the right place at the right time when an egg-shaped craft came down 30 feet across. It had what looked like a fin that was rotating around the outer portion of the craft, still rotating. The ground where this thing came down was still hot to the touch. It was almost burning. It had this red embers going on. And he said that there were military medical personnel assisting ETs coming out of this craft. One was being carried away in a stretcher. And there was this attempted ongoing communication between their comrades and the body that was being carried off. Now, these things were about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, slight build, oversized head, oversized eyes. They were wearing a one-piece tight-fitting green flight suit. They had mittens on and they had helmets on. And the other point is that they had no knee joint. So they had this stair-step maneuver when they were walking. They had no knee joint. They only could bend at the hips. That was something that was talked about by the primary eyewitness. We'll continue on with the renderings here. So here's Joseph Ray's full-color rendering of what this may have looked like at Fort Polk. We'll zoom in here. Here they are being helped by the medical personnel. They definitely had mittens on, one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They had the helmets on. We'll go on to the next slide here. Here's the comrade being carried off into the ambulance truck. And then we'll do a little bit of a zoom in here. And now you can see kind of a little bit more of a close enhanced view of this corpse being taken to the ambulance truck. So what happened to the survivors? According to the source, the survivors had been sent to a hospital and put into isolation, but all soon died. He also learned that the cadavers were sent to a medical center near Washington, D.C. That's interesting. This is something we've heard multiple times, that there is some type of medical center where these ET bodies, these corpses, are sent to for pathologist reports, for autopsies. What could that place be? Walter Reed Army Medical Center, closed in 2000. This is absolutely ground zero for a number of these autopsies, without a doubt. Multiple sources confirm this. Okay, Kingman, Arizona, UFO. This is May 18th, 1953. I want to mention the work by Harry Drew, who's no longer with us. He was the primary witness on the Kingman crash retrieval, which is in point of fact a forced landing and not a crash retrieval, because when this thing came down, it was 100% intact. Now, what he described, according to the witnesses that Harry Drew had vetted out, was a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft, 14 feet tall, had a series of indentions wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself, and a small entryway hatch. This is my 2D drawing of it. Now, there was a series of military personnel and engineers that took off from Indian Springs. They flew to Phoenix. There were about 30 of them. When they got to Phoenix, they were joined by another 10. So now there was 40 of them. And they took a General Motors bus all the way from Phoenix up to Kingman, where this thing came down, like a late night arrival on dirt roads. I mean, it must have been historic. So you can kind of track the path of where they were going. When they finally got there, this is what they saw. The retrieval operation was already in full swing. They had light-alls. They had a tent at each corner. There were military personnel there. The whole craft was tipped up at a 30-degree angle. There were 3 bodies standing about right here, and there was a leader who was the, quote, leader of the other 3. Two-way communication was made between military personnel and these ETs, and the agreement was the ETs would go with the military on one condition and one condition only, that you do not separate us. That was the agreement that was made. So the other thing that was talked about is that when American medical personnel tried to get inside this craft, they could only stay there for about 3 minutes before they got sick. That happened twice. And this is confirmed by other witnesses as well. So there was something going on within this craft, some residual propulsion still going on within this craft itself. We'll move on to the next slide here. So once they secured the area, they brought in an M25 tank transporter, they built a cradle device, and they were shipping this thing out. This is all at night, and they had to move this thing in haste. So what they were trying to do, and here's where the story gets a little bit murky here, they were trying to move it to Area 51. This is back in 53. So of course I started digging here. Here's Highway 93. You've got to cross the Colorado River, and then you make your way up to Area 51. This is according to Harry Drew, if we're to believe this account. So of course I started digging. Yes, here's the track they took. You can see here Highway 93 started in 1935, still exists. So yes, it did exist back in 1953. Now the question is, what did Groom Lake Area 51 have back in 53? U-2 spy plane test flights didn't even start until 1955. And if you do any research into my good friend Peter Merlin, who wrote a book I'm going to show you a little bit later, there's a little bit of a discrepancy here. So according to Harry Drew, once they got it to the Hoover Dam, they noticed that the outer diameter of this dish-shaped craft was way too big to get it through the upper part of Hoover Dam because there were light fixtures. They couldn't do that. So they actually went to a put-in about 100 feet north of the north wall of the Hoover Dam. They floated a barge down the Colorado River. They took this whole 18-wheeler tractor trailer with the dish-shaped craft on it. They rolled it up onto the barge. They strung cables across the Colorado River and were basically trying to get this barge across the Colorado River. Now this is all at night in haste. There's a lot of men screaming and swearing. They got to secure this thing before daylight. And all of a sudden the cable snapped and this barge starts going down the Colorado River and actually hits the wall of the Hoover Dam. So being at the water levels that are, there may be a mark there today where this thing made contact. I haven't seen it myself, but it may exist. Let's do a little bit of a blow up. This gives you an idea of what this may have looked like. So eventually they strung another series of cables across the Colorado River. They got it to the other side, and then according to Harry Drew, they brought it to Area 51. So this is Harry's book on this. This is a very rare book, 7 Days in May, The Kingman UFO Story. Almost impossible to get this book. I probably have one of a couple of dozen that were ever published. So interesting book. Harry did a great job. He's no longer with us, but I want to give credit for his research. But here's where it gets a little bit murky, because on page 18, on Peter Merlin's book, who is absolutely the world expert on Area 51, there's nobody better on this planet. He wrote this book called Dreamland, The Secret History of Area 51. It's about a 600-page volume, fully referenced, fully illustrated. It weighs 6 pounds. It's a massive book. Page 18, prior to 1955, there was an auxiliary airstrip at Groom Lake, which was used during World War II for gunnery training. There were no hangars there. There was really no established buildings at Area 51 back in 53. So whatever Harry was talking about, there's a little bit of discrepancy. But as being a historian, I have to give you the truth, even if the truth doesn't agree with what I want to hear. So we'll just continue on here. Go ahead. That's possible. That's possible.
Just so that you all know, we have a special guest tonight. This is Carrie Cassidy. She's been doing this stuff for, when did you start, Carrie?
20 years.
20 years. And so she's got Project Camelot on Rumble, I know of. If you guys are interested in checking out her research, it's extensive.
Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1953. Michael Olvey is the source. He was an Army warrant officer, page 15 in the book of Leonard Stringfield. So again, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is ground zero for a lot of this information. So he was at the right place at the right time, and I believe it's hangar number 4 where this actually took place. I can't prove it, but I think it's hangar number 4, and if you look at that arrow here, that takes you to Bay E, which I've actually been inside this hangar. Can't go there now, but this is all before 9/11. And what he says is that a DC-7 4-engine cargo aircraft taxied up onto the base. This is all at night, and picture this being inside a hangar. So once they got the aircraft taxied into the hangar doors shut, and then there was a left port cargo bay door that opened up, and then they had a forklift that started offloading these pallets. On these pallets were these wooden crates, and this warrant officer got within 12 feet of these crates, and he started looking inside, and what did he see? He saw 3 ET bodies, all deceased, in these 3 crates that had their lids pulled off. They were about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They had oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose, and they were all being suspended off the bottom of the wooden crates by a white netting that protected their bodies from the dry ice freezer burn below. That's according to the military source here. Now, he also said that one of these bodies was female because it had breasts. And I'm just bringing it up because this is what it said in the report. So we'll just keep our history here. So let's take Rudy's drawing as a reference, and we'll go to the full color rendering. And this is Joseph Ray's depiction of what this may have seen or been like back in 1953 at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So he also saw the crates where debris was being offloaded as well. This is a top view looking down. And this is what these bodies look like. They were minute, they were emaciated, they had arms that went down below their knees. They had oversized head, always wearing this one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. Next one, reference number 16, alien autopsy performed at Walter Reed Hospital. The cadaver was described as being 3 feet in height with a large head, protruding brow, sunken eyes which wrapped around to the side of the face, very long arms, gray skin. Pathologist report from the Cleveland Clinic, 52 to 53. So, big question is, what do these ET bodies look like? And not just from science fiction, but what do they actually look like from the medical personnel that perform autopsies on these, the pathologists that wrote up the reports, the x-ray? What do the actual bodies look like according to documented, legitimate medical personnel? Well, they're 3.5 to 4.5 foot tall. That's item number 1. 2 round almond eyes, sunken without pupils, heavy brow ridge, large hairless head by human standards, no earlobes, no definitive nose, small slit for a mouth, very thin neck, small torso, arms described as long, reaching down to the knees. Hands have 4 fingers without thumb, short thin legs, skin color beige, tan, brown, tan. So if we take everything we know about these bodies from the pathologist report, from the x-rays, from medical personnel involved in autopsies, and we take in these parameters right here, I said, okay, Rudy, give me the best possible drawing of what these bodies look like based on the actual pathologist report. And I believe he did a miraculous job. I don't think we're going to get any better than this. And this is what Rudy came up with. This is what these bodies look like, according to the pathologist report. Probably not going to get any better than this. This is about the best we're going to get. This is based on multiple military personnel, medical personnel who autopsied these things. And you can see the heavy brow ridge. You can see the oversized head, the slit for a mouth. He's basically replicated exactly to a T what these pathologist reports are talking about here. Okay, Walker Air Force Base, New Mexico, April 12, 1954. This is a gentleman who was 18 years old. He was a young guy. He served as a photographer 1954 to 1955. This is page 82 in this book right here. This gentleman knew everything about photography. He knew about lighting. He knew about shading. He knew about shadows. He knew about exposure. He was, by 18, he was a professional at this. So a call went out to his group to board this helicopter, which is an H-19. And when they got into this helicopter over the PA system, quote, "Men, this is not a drill, this is a red alert scramble." So they take off from Walker Air Force Base, which used to be Roswell Army Airfield. They start flying north. The freeway is on their right. They make a left-hand turn. Now they're heading northwest toward Corona. And when they get over the hill, they see this craft. Measured about 50 feet in diameter. It had a ring wrapped around the outer circumference with light still rotating. There was a medium-sized dome on top. Came in at about a 45-degree angle. And this photographer is told to start snapping photographs of this thing as this thing is hovering 20 feet above this dish-shaped craft. He got a real good look at this. So this has been documented, absolutely documented. Now, what's interesting is when the helicopter landed, something became very apparent immediately. There was this pungent odor of automobile battery acid. And this is something that comes up multiple times in these crash retrieval operations. By this time, the retrieval operation was kind of in full swing because there were also other medical trucks getting toward the area. He saw 4 ET bodies from his vantage point. Now, when he landed, he found out from medical and military personnel that there were 2 other bodies inside the craft for a grand total of 6 bodies recovered in this retrieval operation. So we'll go to the full color rendering here. Gives you an idea of what this may have looked like. So this 18-year-old photographer, this is what he's telling us within this report here. The other Roswell, crash on Texas-Mexican border. I want to give credit to Noe and Ruben for doing this book. This is spring 1955. And this is just across the Texas-Mexican border. We'll go to the next slide here. This gives you an idea of the vicinity of where this actually took place. So you've got 16 F-86 Sabre jets that are flying in conjunction with 4 B-47s. They're flying westbound over southern Texas. And where this thing came down, you see here Langdry, this is Eagle's Nest, came down right here. This is where this thing came down. And while these pilots are flying westbound, one of these F-86 pilots saw this craft come in here. He peeled away from the other group, and then he landed his plane over here at Carswell Air Force Base that you see on the upper left. He got out of his F-86. He went over to Corsicana Municipal Airport, which is a public airport. He climbed in an Aranca tail dragger high wing aircraft with a friend of his, and they flew all the way back to the crash site across the Texas-Mexican border. Now, they got there before it was nighttime. When they arrived, this is what they saw. 25-foot diameter dish-shaped craft, about 5 feet tall. The upper dome had already popped off. The Mexican military got there first before anybody else got there. So they got there first. And what I thought was interesting is there was a debris trail leading up to the craft itself. And since it was getting cold out, the primary eyewitness stated that a lot of these Mexican soldiers were taking debris off the ground, which was still warm, and they were wrapping that debris around covers that they got from the 6x6 troop transport, warming up the covers, and then putting the covers on their bodies to warm them up. This is a little key factor that you just wouldn't think that they would make that up. So it actually adds credibility to the craft. Now, there was a hull breach on the side of the craft depicting some of the bodies on the interior. I'm going to kind of take you inside here. Now, according to Air Force pilot Robert Willingham, the arms looked like broomsticks. So it was a gruesome sight. These things were dismembered. They were burnt up. So it was kind of a gruesome sight. But this is according to pilot Robert Willingham. Here's a full color rendering of what this scene may have looked like if we could be there back in Mexico back in 1955. And we'll do a zoom in here to show you what the bodies look like. So it wasn't for the faint of heart, but this is from the first-hand military source, Robert Willingham. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, 1955, Mrs. G, Foreign Materials Division, page 17 in the book. This is one of these cases where you can just tell by what you're reading in this case that this woman is not lying to us. Something that may have looked like the closing scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you have this big warehouse, that's where she was working at back at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This gives you an idea of war operations building. This is the warehouse building 258. And what this woman stated is that she cataloged 1,000 components that came in from the interior of a recovered UFO. 1,000 components. So when we hear about senators and congressmen not having any physical evidence, this woman is telling us that she was there at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1955 and she cataloged 1,000 components. So it's really her word against these senators and congressmen. We'll continue on here. So I asked Rudy, give me a drawing of our Mrs. G, and she's cataloging things, and then I want you to populate these shelves with all this ET components and debris and type craft that may have been retrieved. So what they had done is they set this thing up as an assembly line. There was one gentleman at a station taking a photograph of the debris. Then there was a next gentleman who bagged and tagged it. And then it went over to Mrs. G, who cataloged it. And she had over 1,000 components that were cataloged. While all this is going on, there was this rotating, rolling dolly that went by with 2 ET corpses being preserved in this formaldehyde type liquid. So she saw all this. Now, researchers got to her just before she passed away, and this is what she said. Uncle Sam can't do anything to me once I'm in my grave. 6 months later, she died. I believe her testimony to be absolutely authentic. Here's our rendering of what this may have looked like if we were there working with Mrs. G here. We'll continue on. Since over 1,000 components of physical ET hardware exists, this evidence should be tracked down by senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances and should be presented in open public congressional hearings. This is something that needs to happen now before these last legacy witnesses pass away here. Source: retired Air Force pilot, late 1950s, conducted by Ed Camarack Jr. When he interviewed this Air Force pilot, he stated that he saw a 5 to 6 minute black and white film clip depicting a dish-shaped craft about 60 feet in diameter. It had a gash on the side of it. The movie panned to another scene showing you the interior components of the craft that had this projection screen with this iconology written on the inside wall of this projection screen. Here's kind of a blow-up of what the engine looked like and also these different type lettering on the inside wall of the craft itself. Now, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, April 1962. 15-foot diameter dish-shaped craft was seen by 5 transient pilots that were part of the 354th Tactical Air Command Fighter Wing, page 88. So the leader of these guys was in charge of their physical well-being. So they were jogging down the row of hangars at Wright-Patterson Air Force back in 1962. They were looking for a wall to complete their 4-wall racquetball court. Basically, that's what they were doing. So as they're going through these hangars, one of these hangar doors was open up and they ran inside and they saw this 15-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. There were about 6 military personnel with rifles. It was roped off. It was sitting up on 2 engine test stands, and they were challenged. And I thought it's very interesting what this gentleman said here. Here's Joseph Ray's full color rendering of what this may have looked like if we were back there with these Tactical Air Command fighter pilots. Here's what the guard said. The guard challenged by saying, "I don't think you're supposed to be in here, sir." I replied to the affirmative, and we turned about face and departed, mumbling to ourselves that the good old U.S. had developed, or had all along, flying saucers in service. This is another one of these testimonies from a military personnel. What I absolutely believe they're telling us the truth on what they're seeing here. Reference number 53, date 1963. Source was PJ, captain in the Navy. He worked for Braniff Airlines, and he saw a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So the case keeps building that there's craft there, there's debris there, there's bodies at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, at least in the early 1950s, going back to the 1940s, probably going into the late 1960s. We'll continue on. December 1963, Cherry Point, North Carolina. And this is a Marine. We have his name. His name is Roy Baker, page 152 in the book. And this is Cherry Point, a little bit north of Havelock. He was told to board a plane with blacked out windows. So he climbs into this plane. They fly about 3 hours from Cherry Point, North Carolina. They land at an undisclosed location that he didn't know about. When he got off the plane, they opened up the hangar doors. He looked inside and he saw this craft, which was about 40 feet in diameter, 15 feet tall, had a highly polished mirror reflective chrome exterior. There were 9 elliptically opaque windows wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. And then he said that the entryway hatch on this craft was so fully integrated into the skin of the craft itself, you could not put a razor blade inside these seams. That's how fully integrated the hatchway was. Now, he also mentioned that there were teams of white lab coat technicians with diamond tip drill bits trying to breach the hull of the craft. So these red dots are the attempted point of entry. You can see they were trying to do it on the seam and they couldn't get in. They absolutely could not get in. And could we get a time, Rudy, of where we are on time? 8:28. Okay, so we got time for about one more here. Let's continue on. Here is Joseph Ray's full color rendering of what this craft may have looked like if we could be there back in 1963. No visible means of propulsion, no wings, no ailerons. The red dots are the attempted points of entry. So here's what they tried to do. When the diamond tip drill bits failed, they went to acetylene cutting torches. No luck there either. The final shot was a laser, and that didn't work. So they had 3 attempts to get into this craft, and they could not get in whatsoever. I don't know to this day if they were ever able to get inside, but they did try these 3 attempts. Now, what you're looking at here is an actual original pen drawing. This is not the reproduction. This is a copy of the actual original. This is by the Marine himself, Roy Baker. I'm going to break this down. It's rough, but there's some key items here. Upper left, upper right, excruciatingly well lit. You can see the whole thing was propped up on scaffolding about 5 feet off the floor, so you could walk under this thing. If you look on the left of center opaque window, there is this black dot. That is the attempted point of entry with the diamond tip drill bit. And then you've got these pads supporting the craft itself. So this is from the Marine who actually was interviewed by Leonard Stringfield. Michael Johnstone interviewed the Marine back in 1986. About 12 years ago now, I tracked down Michael Johnstone. I interviewed him on videotape. He gave me all the other details of what Roy Baker told him about this case. He came up with this drawing, and there was this 1-inch lip between the outer skin of the craft itself and the outer portion of these opaque windows, something that you could feel with your thumb. He mentioned that within the report. We'll continue on here. Here's my AutoCAD drawing to give you an idea of what this thing looks like. Now, this whole thing was propped up on scaffolding. You could walk under it. There was a white circle painted directly below this craft, and his orders were to shoot to kill anyone who tried to breach that circle. We'll continue on here. Here's Joseph Ray's rendering of what this thing actually looks like. And here's John McNeil's first pass on what we were talking about here. You can see we've got the lab coat technicians, we've got the white circle here, we've got everything with the scaffolding. This tracks with what the military witness has talked about. So what I want to do now is I want to take you through a tour of this facility like we're a fly on the wall, and we're going to penetrate this chain link fence and get inside this hangar. So we're getting through the hangar now. We're getting a little bit closer here. You can see it's all coming into view. We'll get a little bit closer. You can see we've got the military personnel. We've got the white painted circle on the floor, excruciatingly well lit. We've got the scaffolding in place. We've got suit types, CIA types. He described that at the scene as well. We'll zoom in a little bit closer. Diamond tip drill bits are trying to get in. They cannot get in the craft itself. We'll go a little bit more. This is a 45-degree look down angle. He absolutely described white lab coat technicians, and they all had a color-coded badge, which we'll talk about in a little bit later here. Let's go on to the next slide. Now, on the last day he was there, because he was there for 2 weeks, his job was to guard this thing. He said the last day he came into the hangar, it was being moved off its scaffolding, put onto a cradle device, and then they were putting tarps over this thing. So here we're about 0% tarp right now. They had a cradle device. We're about 50% tarped here. We'll continue on. We're fully tarped. We're getting ready to move out of this facility. And now we're moving on to the next location. So the way they keep these things under wraps is, number one, they compartmentalize the information. That's number one. Number two is they move these assets from one location to the next, and they keep the chain of command very low. Very few people at the top are the only ones who know about the whole thing. This is Rudy's drawing to give an idea of what this may have looked like as they're getting ready to move this to the next location. Now, we talk about the laser incident. Once the acetylene torches failed, they brought in 2 18-wheeler tractor lowboy trucks with these big electrical generators on them. They had heavy gauge cable. They actually did have lasers back in 1963. They weren't the most powerful things in the world. They connected the generating device to the laser, shined the laser onto the skin of the craft. It bounced up, reflected, and damaged the ceiling tile. That's what happened back in 1963. When they moved the laser away, it was warm to the touch, but had no effect on the skin whatsoever. Here's the scene showing the damage to the ceiling tile. So that was an interesting point. Here's the actual sketch from the Marine describing the incident. And then here's the color-coded badging. So if you had a green badge, you could go here. If you had a yellow badge, you had access to this facility. If you had a red badge, you had access to the entire facility. Now, one time when the Marine was at this hangar facility, nobody checked him. He got into there all alone. He had a small Minox camera, and he took a photograph of this thing. And he said, quote, "Someday I will tell this story, and by God, people are going to believe me." However, that photograph was lost in a flood back in 1983, and we lost the evidence. So we were this close of getting a photograph of this craft propped up on scaffolding. It would have been for everyone to see, but it was lost in a flood. So I said, okay, let's see if we can do a reproduction based on what an actual Minox camera photograph may have looked like. And here's the reproduction that we came up with. Something like this was taken by Roy Baker back in 1963. So Paul Nitz, United States Secretary of the Navy, 63 to 67. The primary eyewitness said that there was a Secretary of the Navy who just about walked over that white line. He almost got shot. It would have been this gentleman right here. This gentleman would have been involved in that incident. Now, 4-star Major General Melvin F. McNichol. Why do I bring him up? He was base commander at Tinker Air Force Base. And here is his obituary. Ex-Tinker Commander Melvin McNichol dies. Daly, Oklahoma, July 11th, 1986. So he is who he says he is. He was good friends with Charlotte Mann, who was involved in the Cape Girardeau incident. These two were friends. They had a mutual interest in UFOs. And so about 5 years ago, she gave a lecture at the International UFO Congress in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, these two were good friends. And so they were talking. And Charlotte Mann came over to Melvin McNichol and said, you know, we've been friends for a long time. We've got this mutual interest in UFOs. And you haven't told me anything. Are we still friends? I don't even know anymore. Are we still friends? And this general turns to Charlotte Mann and says, Charlotte, if you ever repeat what I'm about to tell you, it could ruin my career, and I'll deny it. He proceeds to tell her 3 things. Number 1, saw a UFO which was located in the west. That checks out with our Marine. Number 2, he walked around a UFO on a catwalk which was propped up on scaffolding, just like the Marine had said. Bodies were recovered and one was still alive. So when I heard Charlotte Mann describe what Melvin McNichol told her, I said, boom, I got it now. Because this tracks exactly with what the Marines said back in December 1963. I'm sure they didn't know each other. So when I heard Charlotte mention this, I said, now I've got independent confirmation. I can prove it now. We do have a recovered UFO somewhere in the West back in 63, and Melvin McNichol just basically covered it for me. So what I wanted to do in this presentation, just give you a brief overview of some of the most mission critical crash retrieval cases from this book from Leonard Stringfield. And I want to thank Rudy for making this all come alive, because I could not have done this without Rudy. And the goal here is to preserve an important part of our national history through the use of illustrations to really make these things come alive and preserve our history. And I want to thank you for your attention. Cool. Go ahead.
So, UAP landings or crash sites were near military bases. But why is it the military would go in or arrive before like local police or?
Well, that's really the 60. ET races are so advanced. Why are they coming from light years away, 2.3 trillion light years away? They're getting through gravity wells, they're getting through quarks, they're getting through black holes. They traverse all this time and space, and then they get into our atmosphere and they crash. Doesn't really make sense. Now, there is a case to be made, and there's some documented evidence to back this up, is that there is, in point of fact, a rogue group within the military intelligence industrial complex that are targeting, tracking, and shooting these things down for, one, their free energy propulsion system advancements, and number two, for their weapons system advancements. And so the U.S. military intelligence complex, they will stop at nothing to retrieve these assets. So that appears to be what's going on. That appears to be what's going on. Anybody else? Paul Hynek wrote the foreword to it. Yes. Yep. Cool. Go ahead.
So I have some secret information that we actually got death threats over many years ago, and I can tell you this much about it, that James Jesus Angleton had files, and in those files is the real story of Roswell and a bunch of other things. And again, we and the people that brought us in to tell us about it had death threats. So I can't tell you anything more. I know more about it, but I can't tell you anything more. So there is a lot more to the story, even as amazingly as Michael has done to the Roswell story and to others that are in the files of James Jesus Angleton.
Great. Wonderful. Anybody else?
The televised UAP.
The hearings?
Yes.
Yeah, I did watch the hearings like most of you here, and I was underwhelmed. I think it was a nothing burger. We're 1 year beyond it now, and there's been no follow-up. There's been no crash retrieval. There's been no disclosure. There's been no bodies. No craft have come out. It's up to us now. It's clear the government's just going to keep on kicking the can down the road here, and they want to run out the clock like they did with Roswell, because there are no 509th Bomb Group members alive anymore. They've run out the clock, and in the eyes of the government, it's cover-up complete. And they're going to try to do this with the rest of the legacy witnesses. And that's why it's so important to highlight Leonard's book, because he had a lot more cases, and they can all come together as a united coalition, one voice. That's what we need to get this thing forward. Anybody else?
One more. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Question hog. I'm so sorry. Do you know any that were more recent? I mean, do we have any more recent?
I have a case in 97, and Dr. Greer gets credit for vetting the witness, but he was basically at a retrieval operation. This is April 1997 in Bolivia, in the jungle, where he came across a 65-foot long by about 45-foot tall egg-shaped craft that embedded into the side of a rocky outgrowth. There was at least 2 bodies involved in the retrieval operation. It had a hull breach on the side of it, and it was pouring out liquid that he got on his skin. So that is a very credible case. So that's 97. And of course,
also in the UAP
Yep.
hearing, there is a witness who has witnessed an amazing crash retrieval. And his first name, I think, is Michael. I talked to him. He was going to do an interview, and then I guess somebody got to him, and he backed out.
How much international, I mean, you've talked about Bolivia, you talked about the Mexican-Texas border.
Right.
You talked about Argentina, I think you brought up earlier.
Sure.
I mean, that's the Americas, north and south. And Russia's a big place.
Yep.
China has some of the highest, well, South China has some of the highest. Where do they come into play? Are we getting any information internationally?
The United States government military is on the site all around the world, and they control the story, and they buy the crash and go in everywhere. And that includes Africa, and these small reports, we went to France, interviewed witnesses there. I mean, the crash retrievals happen everywhere, all over the world, but the United States government, again, the military, is completely in control.
Okay.
Questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Are all of the aliens found mostly gray? Are they considered gray aliens?
Well, what we're dealing with here is a multi-headed hydra. So you've got alleged ETs, you've got man-made craft, you've got interdimensional craft, you've got alleged time travelers, you've got unidentified submerged objects. So you've got 5 things going on at the same time, all converging. And so that's why it makes it so hard to get a real, pin down what this phenomenon actually is. So even Jalen Hynek knew that if we were only talking about ETs, how boring this would be, because this phenomenon is a lot bigger than just flying saucers. In fact, 51% of all UFO cases are, in point of fact, USO cases, unidentified submerged object, which is almost completely forgotten about. And it's almost never even talked about. So there's so many things going on here. And the U.S. military-industrial complex, they are using the ET brush to hide their own deep black program. So that's something we want to consider as well. So this thing is multi-layered. It's a trickster. These things can go in and outside of mountains with no impact. They can materialize and dematerialize at will. So we're not talking about physical craft. So there's much more going on here. Yeah. So thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Rudy.
UFO, UAP. What's your theory on why they're changing the terminology? It seems like a rebrand.
Well, what they're trying to do is they're trying to make anything prior to 94 completely disappear. With the tic-tac and things like that, they're trying to make those type cases disappear. But I won't let it happen. Other UFO researchers won't let it happen. Kerry won't let it happen. We've got all the legacy cases going back to 1865. We've got a mountain of evidence within the NICAP files. I mean, if anyone here gets bored on a Sunday afternoon and it's raining, just go to NICAP.org, open up Chronos file where it says 1952, and you can just read to your heart's content about military first-hand pilot encounters with these craft. And there's like hundreds of them. The 52 flap outpaces the 1947 flap, and you cannot walk away thinking there's nothing to this. So this thing is involved, it's documented, and the only choice that we have now is to track down these legacy witnesses that can pull this data out with the physical evidence. Anything less than that, and we're all going to be here another 80 years and not knowing about it. So this is the final curtain call on disclosure. It's up to us at this point.
I found it really disappointing last year with the build-up because Michael was working with Dr. Greer last year on that DC whistleblower event. I don't know if anybody was aware of that. Did you guys get to see that? Everybody knew that was coming, and he was going to. These were credible whistleblowers. It wasn't a David Grush thing where David Grush says, "Well, I spoke to somebody who saw something."
Mm-hmm.
These whistleblowers, Mike and I actually had contact. We were able to interview these guys and get their drawings down for this presentation, and it was the most. So I'm new to this stuff. I mean, I've been a science fiction fan. I've been an illustrator for a long time. But when I met Michael, he's telling me these stories are fantastic. But I'm an outsider on the inside trying to help them out the best I can. And so when we end up talking to these people, and you get invested in it, and then Grush comes out like right before the Greer presentation, and it was, I mean, Dr. Greer, we had dinner with him a couple of years ago, and he asked me, and it was the most like surreal moment of my life, one of them anyway, where he looks at me and he says, can I use And I looked at him like, yeah. Because I'd heard somebody, I used to teach Saddleback, and a student came up to me and says, do you know about Stephen Greer? And I said, no, never heard of him.
Rudy, do you want to talk about how high your drawing went? As a feather in your cap, you want to talk about how high your drawing went?
Yeah. Okay, so bottom line is, I'm disappointed because everybody saw this coming. It was building up. Dr. Greer is pretty credible, whatever your opinion is on him, and he's got information. I don't know what to make of it. I'm on the outside. But when he's ready to present this stuff, all of a sudden, you get David Grush coming out, and all the news channels, which I don't watch mainstream news at all anymore because, in my opinion, they're completely controlled. And again, my background is propaganda thesis. I wrote on propaganda. And you know that that's what happens. The media gets something, they run with the narrative, everybody's saying the same thing, they're programming you. That's why it's called television, telecommunication, vision, programming. Oh, I'm going to watch this program. We take this terminology for granted, but it's because we've been raised up with it. Mockingbird, okay, there you go. I mean, that's the thing is that, like, maybe, you know, a lot of people in here may not know what Project Blue Book is, and they don't know who Alan Hynek was. But But bottom line is, Grush comes out, and all the news media grabbed him, and he was everywhere, sucked all the air out of the room, and you very rarely saw anything with Dr. Greer's presentation. And Michael was key in that because he was the one that was telling us, myself and a couple of other artists, this is what needs to happen. We interviewed these people, and I'm sitting here just blown away and drawing these drawings, and then to get there and to see it, like 1 million people were streaming this thing. And I'm trying to keep it hush-hush because I work as an art teacher at a Catholic school, and I freelance on the side, but try to keep it down low. And all I know is the market director this time last year for the art school, or for the art program, she calls me up, and she says, Rudy, sorry to bother you over summer. She says, but I just want to let you know I'm in Palm Springs right now, and I'm watching the news, and I think your artwork is being featured on Jesse Waters. And I went, what? And a friend of mine had posted that a couple days before, it was the same image by Michael Herrera, and it was on the Daily, what's it called, the Daily?
You don't have to be modest, Rudy. You made it all the way to Fox News, and I'm proud you did. I'm proud you did, brother.
Daily Mail in England. And so they interviewed that person that did that article. So the artwork was there, and I was just sitting there like, whoa, what is going on? But again, you only saw it for one moment. Dr. Greer's presentation was completely over because of constant repeat, which is propaganda 101. Repeat, until people get the message. And Grush became the guy.
Go ahead.
So what is your goal?
My goal is to raise awareness to the multiple crash retrievals over the past 80 years and try to track down the remaining witnesses that were first-hand military witnesses involved in the retrieval operation. That's my goal. That's the only shot we have. That is my ultimate goal. That's the only shot we have. Okay, thanks a lot. Good. Yep, good, great.
Take care. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Be in touch. I'll send you a
Good.